It began subtly, as all the worst things do. A thread pulled from the edge of a perfect tapestry. At first, you don't even notice. The picture still looks whole, beautiful even, but pull that thread a little more, and the image starts to warp. The colors bleed. The faces you thought you knew so well begin to twist into something grotesque and unfamiliar. For me, that thread was a laugh. Not Mark's usual booming, infectious laugh that had first drawn me in, but something else. It was a shared, secretive chuckle between him and my best friend, Clara. They were standing by the French doors that led to the garden, their backs to me. It was quick, a conspiratorial little sound that died the moment they sensed my presence. They turned, their faces wiped clean and plastered with smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. My life was a carefully curated masterpiece of domestic bliss. Mark, my husband of 10 years, was the sturdy frame, the dependable oak. We had built our life in this sprawling house, a relic of my family's old money that I had inherited. It was our sanctuary. And Clara, my friend since we were girls with skinned knees and matching friendship bracelets, she was the vibrant, essential color that made the whole picture sing. She was practically a sister, a permanent fixture in our home, especially after her own messy divorce. We were a trio, an unbreakable unit, the three of us against the world. Or so I believed. I had trusted them with every fiber of my being, handing them the keys not just to my home, but to the most vulnerable corners of my heart. The thought that they could share a secret, even a small one, felt like a tiny fissure in the foundation of my world. That initial unsettling moment was easy to dismiss. I was being paranoid, overly sensitive. But it didn't die. It festered. It waited. The thread had been pulled, and it was impossible to weave it back into place. The days that followed were a study in forced normalcy. We had dinners, we watched movies, we talked about landscaping the back garden. Yet, I found myself watching them. I observed the way their eyes would meet for a fraction of a second too long over the dinner table. I noticed how they would both suddenly silence their phones when I entered a room. Clara, who used to tell me every mundane detail of her day, became vague and evasive. Mark, who always left his laptop open on his desk, started shutting it down and angling it away from view. Mark's routine, once as predictable as the sunrise, began to change. He started going for long, late-night drives to clear his head. He claimed the stress of work was getting to him, but he came back smelling not of exhaust fumes, but of Clara's cloying, jasmine-scented perfume. Then there were the financial documents. I came into the study one afternoon to find him hastily closing a browser window. But not before I caught a glimpse of a life insurance policy. My life insurance policy. When I asked him about it, he feigned surprise, claiming he was just reviewing our estate planning, making sure everything was in order. "Just being responsible, honey," he'd said, patting my hand with a clammy palm. His touch felt alien, reptilian. One Saturday, I found her near the old disused well at the far end of the property, a place we never went. She was on her phone, her voice a low, urgent murmur. She snapped it shut the second she saw me, claiming she was just looking for a spot with better reception. Her eyes darted nervously toward the heavy stone lid of the well. A flicker of something. Was it fear? Guilt? Crossed her face before being replaced by her signature dazzling smile. She threw her arm around my shoulder, her cheerfulness suddenly feeling aggressive, suffocating. A misplaced coffee receipt from a cafe near Clara's apartment in Mark's pocket. A book on household chemical compounds. Not my usual reading. Tucked under a cushion on the sofa where Clara had been sitting. Each discovery was a small cut. I would confront them, gently at first, and their explanations were always so plausible, so reasonable. I was being silly. I was reading too much into things. They would look at me with such earnest concern, a pantomime of worry for my fragile state of mind. I started to question my own sanity, wondering if grief and stress were finally making me unravel. The house itself seemed to turn against me. It was no longer a sanctuary, but a stage for a sinister play. One evening, I was walking down the darkened upstairs hallway when I overheard them in the master bedroom. The door was ajar, just a crack.
"It has to look like an accident, Mark. A simple, tragic fall."
A cold dread washed over me, so intense it made my knees weak. I flattened myself against the wall, my hand clamped over my mouth to stifle a gasp.
"The stairs are too risky. She's too careful. We need something foolproof."
The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I was searching for a misplaced heirloom, a locket my grandmother had left me, in the back of Mark's closet. My fingers brushed against a shoebox tucked away under a pile of old sweaters. Except it wasn't a shoebox. It was heavier. I pulled it out and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled amongst some papers, was a gun. Not a hunting rifle like the ones my father kept locked away, but a small, cold, brutally efficient-looking handgun. Beneath it was a folder. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were printed copies of my life insurance policy, the one Mark had been reviewing, with a payout that would make him a very wealthy widower. There were forged deeds transferring the ownership of my ancestral home, my property, my last connection to my parents, entirely into Mark's name to be enacted upon my death. And tucked in with them was a one-way plane ticket to a tropical paradise, dated for the week after my planned accident. It was in Clara's name. The cold, methodical planning of it all just stole the air from my lungs. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a business transaction. The betrayal was so absolute, so profound, it felt like a physical blow. The man I had promised to love forever, and the woman I considered a sister were plotting to erase me and steal everything I had. I sat there on the floor of the closet, surrounded by the scent of my husband's clothes, the evidence of his treachery in my lap. The shock gave way to an icy calm. The paranoia and self-doubt that had plagued me for weeks just evaporated, replaced by a chilling clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. I was being hunted. The final piece was a small, folded piece of paper at the bottom of the box. It was a handwritten note in Clara's looping, familiar script. Friday, the garden party. No one will notice during the fireworks. The well is deep enough. Make sure it's done. In that moment, sitting on the floor of the closet, the old me died. The trusting wife, the loyal friend. She evaporated like a phantom. In her place, a new woman was born, one forged in the ice of betrayal. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I carefully placed every document and the gun back into the box. My escape began not with a frantic run for the door, but with a quiet, calculated performance. For the next 2 days, I played the part of my life. I was the oblivious, cheerful hostess. On the night of the party, I was the perfect hostess. I wore a shimmering silver dress, visible, a beacon in the gathering dusk. As the time for the fireworks approached, I saw Mark and Clara exchange a look.
Mark came towards me, a drink in his hand. "Let's go for a walk, honey," he said, his voice smooth as poison.
I smiled sweetly and took his arm. The first firework shot into the sky, a screaming whistle, then a deafening boom. As Mark's grip on my arm tightened, I acted. I tripped, lurching forward and splashing the drink from his hand all over his shirt. As he cursed and swiped at the stain, I didn't run. I melted into the shadows of the overgrown hedge maze I had played in as a child. They called my name with irritation, with rising panic. I was already gone. I slipped through the maze, into the house through the cellar door I had left unlocked, and down into the service tunnel. As the grand finale exploded above, I was already deep in the woods, my pre-packed emergency bag on my shoulder. I didn't look back. I left them there in the dark, with their failed plot and the ghost of the woman they tried to erase. The police, alerted by an anonymous, pre-scheduled email I had prepared, were already on their way, complete with copies of the evidence I had photographed. My new life had begun, not with a scream, but with the quiet, satisfying click of a plan falling into place. I survived. I am stronger now, and I am free. And I have a warning for all who will listen. Look closely at the tapestry of your life, and never, ever ignore a single pulled thread.